really matters? That might be the most important question you can ask. So let's talk about it. Welcome to What Really Matters podcast, Everyday Spirituality with Karen Wyatt. Thanks for joining me here today for another episode. I'm going to be talking about the difference between belief and faith, which is something I'm finding very interesting right now as I do a little reading about it, and that honestly, I haven't thought about that before. I think I have used those terms, belief and faith, interchangeably somewhat in the past, and I find right now that it's really helpful to separate them and think about them differently. This came about because of an email that I received from the Center for Action and Contemplation that included a quote from Alan Watts. Alan Watts was a philosopher, and he wrote a book called The Wisdom of Insecurity back in 1951. So his wisdom has been around for quite some time now. But it is this quote that I read from Alan Watts that got me started thinking about belief and faith, and also thinking about the levels of consciousness, which I've talked about before in previous episodes. We've been through four levels of consciousness, and particularly the first three of those four are predominant in our culture and society right now, but there are levels before those three. And the fourth one I talk about is integral, which comes after those three predominant levels of consciousness. And there are levels beyond integral as well. So I'm only talking about four of many other levels that can be there, because these are the levels that are predominant in our society. Integral is the level of consciousness development that we need to get to as quickly as possible. And a lot of the work that people in spiritual arenas are doing right now is actually geared toward helping people transcend the lower three levels, which are called part of the first tier, to actually get to this integral level of consciousness, which has the hope of vastly changing our world and helping us solve many of the problems that we're facing right now if we can help more people raise their level of consciousness to the integral level. I will do a quick review of those levels. I've talked about them in previous episodes, but I'm going to start with this quote from Alan Watts, because this is really the basis of everything I want to talk about today around belief and faith. All right, so Alan Watts has written, "We must make here a clear distinction between belief and faith, because in general practice, belief has come to mean a state of mind which is almost the opposite of faith." Wow, that blew me away. I've never thought that they could possibly be opposites, but let me keep reading and hear his explanation. "Belief is the insistence that the truth is what one would wish it to be. The believer will open his mind to the truth on the condition that it fits in with his preconceived ideas and wishes. Faith, on the other hand, is an unreserved opening of the mind to the truth, whatever it may turn out to be. Faith has no preconceptions. It is a plunge into the unknown. Belief clings, but faith lets go. In this sense of the word, faith is the essential virtue of science, and likewise of any religion that is not self-deception." So again, that's by Alan Watts from The Wisdom of Insecurity. This is so powerful to me, what he's writing here about the difference between belief and faith. And I realize many believers say that they have faith, but I really like how he distinguishes between the two and why more faith is needed in our world and perhaps less belief. So we're going to dive into this and unpack it a little bit and talk about it in greater detail. But I wanted to start by reading that quote first. So next, we'll move on to talking about those 4 different levels of consciousness that I've described before. I want to review them again. You can never hear this too many times because it takes a while to start to grasp that there are different levels of consciousness, and that one of the reasons we are undergoing polarization in our society and culture wars is because we have individuals in our society in these 3 first tier stages of consciousness, none of which get along with each other or agree with each other. And that's partly what is splitting our society apart. The sooner we can figure out how to get through these stages and transcend into the next tier, into the integral level, the better off we will be as a society. And so, again, when we're talking about these stages of consciousness, they're developmental stages that we go through as we become more and more conscious individuals here within these human bodies. And just like the stages of physical development, which go, as you know, from newborn, infant, toddler, preschool, adolescent, those stages of development, which are well described, we know that you cannot skip stages and you can't jump ahead. You can't go from being a toddler to becoming an adolescent. You have to go through the intermediate stages, through each one of the stages, and you have to complete them in your development before you can reach the next stage. When we talk about consciousness development, it is possible for someone to stay at a lower stage and not move beyond it. And there is a concept called the set point, which it's believed that we each come here to this planet with our own set point. And many people will not grow beyond whatever their set point is. Their set point determines the level of consciousness that they rise to rather easily. And once they reach the set point, many people stay there. It actually takes intentional work to move beyond your set point. And I bring this up again because something that has happened to many of us who right now are working on higher consciousness is that our individual set points may have been higher in our lives than the set points of other members of our families. So we may have risen to a level of higher consciousness, but been within a family that couldn't really support that told us we were strange or weird or heretics or wrong in every way possible. And we may have had to live through that. We may have had to live through the rejection that comes with not being understood. So it's possible to have a set point that is higher than the family you were born into, that is higher than the people in general in your community, and to feel isolated and alone somewhat. But once you find other people who match your level of consciousness, you'll find, oh, these are the people who get me. This is my tribe. These are my people. I can tell them who I am. I can show them the truth of who I am, and they understand me. So one of the dilemmas of sometimes of having a higher consciousness state, if you have a higher consciousness set point, you may have reached that set point in adolescence, early in adolescence, even around age 12 or so. You may have reached your higher consciousness set point, and you may have been spending all the years after that working on yourself. You may have been motivated to want to continue to grow. So maybe you're reading things and studying and doing practices and taking workshops and learning, and maybe you're listening to this podcast for the same reason, because you found a motivation to continue to grow beyond your set point. But there are many, many individuals who have a lower set point who are content to stay where they are. And so those individuals right now are alarmed and frightened by people with higher set points who are growing and pushing the edge, in a sense, of our consciousness, those individuals who are comfortable being at the level they are. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm not judging that. I'm just saying we have to understand that it's frightening, and it puts a lot of pressure on those people who don't want to change in any way. They don't want anything in their lives to change or in our society to change. And the pressure is enormous on them. They're unhappy. They feel frightened. And so that is part of the pushback that we get when we try to make progressive changes in our society, when we want to change attitudes and mindset and help look after people and take care of people the way they need to be cared for. It ends up being threatening to someone who is staying at their set point that may be a bit lower. And simply because that's what they brought with them when they came to the planet, and they don't have a lot of motivation to grow and change. So anyway, I wanted to point that out. You are where you are, wherever you are in your level of consciousness development, and it's all normal. There's no judgment about anyone being at any particular stage, because each one of us has a different path. We each came here with different things to learn and with a different life path to follow and to live out. And so we can't and should not judge anyone who's at a different stage than we are, and also not judge ourselves if we wish or would like to think we would be at a different stage than we're at. We just have to accept all of that. So I wanted to just put that out there. First of all, no judgments about any of these stages. And also, you cannot skip stages. And so actually, each one of us has gone through these stages. And if you find that you live at a somewhat higher stage of consciousness, you will have gone through the lower stages just at an earlier time in your life when you are not as self-aware and not paying attention to your spiritual development. You will have gone through those stages fairly easily and moved on to the next stage until you reached your set point, and you may not have even been aware that that was happening to you, even been aware that you were growing in consciousness in that way. But let's take a look again at these 4 stages that I've been describing. The first stage, I'll just name them first, so we'll go back and talk about them more. The first stage is traditional. The next stage is rational, followed by pluralistic, and then the 4th stage is integral, which, as I'm saying, we need to get as many people in our society up to integral consciousness if we can. So we'll go back to traditional. And so people who live at a traditional stage of consciousness tend to be members of a group, and they are members of a group that tells them what to think and how to behave. And their highest priority is to fit in with that group and to not do anything to offend the group. They long for safety, certainty, and security, and being part of a group offers them some of that, some safety and some security. And also, if they're part of a group, particularly a religion, the religion offers them certainty by telling them this is what the truth is. So the truth for people at the traditional stage of consciousness is defined by other people. And so it comes externally. It isn't something that I think about or decide with my own mind or make judgments about. I accept what I am told as the truth. And so what struck me by Alan Watts's quote was that belief describes people at the traditional level who believe, and they will believe whatever fits in with their preconceived idea that they have been told is right or true for them, for their group, for their system. And so people at the traditional level tend to fear others and outsiders. They look negatively upon other people. They judge other people. They believe that other people are less worthy. And sometimes they try to save other people by bringing them into their fold. But that is part of the traditional mindset and traditional consciousness. And so at traditional, it's very common to believe in a religion, and it could be any religion out there, not just one religion, but to adhere to that religion fairly strictly, because if you violate the religion, there are negative consequences. You can be shunned and rejected. One of the beliefs oftentimes at the traditional level is in hell, and that you will be sent to hell and punished eternally if you go against the beliefs of the group. So again, at the traditional level, beliefs are externally motivated. They come from outside of you. In fact, you don't trust any of your own thoughts, or may not even trust things that you've been taught unless they have been approved of by the group that you belong to. So at this traditional level, once again, belief is what's operative here, as in Alan Watts's words. Belief is the insistence that the truth is what I want it to be, and I want it to be whatever I've been told it is. I want the truth to be what my leaders are telling me in my little group, and I don't want to doubt that or question it, because that would be wrong in the eyes of the group to which I belong. So the traditional stage of consciousness is group focused. We call that a we stage, where the focus is on being part of a group. But the very next stage, the rational stage, is me focused. The rational stage of consciousness is actually the first stage at which individuality is expressed. So as a person reaches the rational stage, they begin to see themselves as different from other people. They begin to see what is different and unique about themselves, and to want to celebrate that and to actually take advantage of that. So they find themselves no longer fitting into the group that used to feel so safe and comfortable. They simply can no longer be part of that group. It doesn't fit anymore, because I'm different. I'm different than all of you. I have my own thoughts. I have my own way of seeing the world. The rational stage of consciousness is the first time we become aware of those differences and that we want to honor them. So societally, the rational stage of consciousness began around the time of the Enlightenment, and the rational stage for humankind was responsible for democracy, for the flourishing of science, and the rational stage also has a focus on success and achievement of the individual, because it's the first time that we sense ourselves as an individual with our own path, our own purpose and reason for being here. The rational level tends to be tolerant of other people, but has a tendency on the dark side toward greed and selfishness. And right now, the entire business world in our society is at a rational level, and part of what we're seeing is part of the problems we're experiencing in the world is because of the greed and selfishness that exists at that level, and the focus only on me as the important person here, and I will do whatever it takes to benefit me. Because I'm an individual and I matter and I'm important. And so the rational level is responsible for some of the over-consumerism that we have in our society, some of the profit focus of business and corporations, and some of the negative, almost evil practices that do not protect the vulnerable or look after the weak, but only strive toward making greater and greater profit. So that's part of this rational level of development. Usually at rational, individuals who kind of transcend the traditional level will reject whatever group they belonged to before. So many people at the rational level call themselves agnostic or atheistic, because they need to reject whatever religion or whatever group, as I said, described the world for them in the past so that they can create their own unique individual definition of life and the world. So at the rational stage, there's usually no longer this belief. People at the rational stage enter into a time of doubt. And that's something Alan Watts didn't talk about, but that I believe in between belief and faith resides doubt. And I think that we have to go through a period of doubt in our lives in order to dismantle the beliefs from the traditional stage that no longer fit us. So the rational stage is the perfect time for us to experience doubt and actually distrust of lots of things around us and lots of questions with not necessarily great answers, though science developed as a way to try to answer questions, a method of inquiry to ask questions and hopefully find answers to questions. But Alan Watts does describe well that science, in a sense, has a virtue of faith, perhaps, that there is or may be an answer out there somewhere to these questions, but I have no idea what it is, what any of the answers are. And so I will conduct a study, an inquiry to try to answer questions. But within science, generally, there are never final answers to any of the questions. Every study, every bit of research generally leads to more questions that have not yet been answered. However, science at least provides a way to study and a way to look at these questions and to search for answers. So even though the scientific method, as Alan Watts describes, opens the door for faith, I think this rational level of science is marked much more by doubt, by no longer believing what was thought to be true before. And that doubt is what opens the door. Doubt is what makes room for faith to happen, for any possibility to happen. And I hope that makes sense. But I really like this idea. And doubt is actually a critical phase that we go through. As I said, we have to dismantle what was handed to us to believe in, or even what we were indoctrinated with when we were younger as our belief system. In the rational stage, we dismantle it with doubt, and that opens us to be able to learn new things and to study and inquire and take new things in. And so doubt is essential as part of the rational phase. But something happens that's very interesting at the end of the rational phase. When you grow through rational, when you reach the end, there is this inflection point. So much of rational is focused on our outer growth as a person. So it's focused on our career, achieving success, gathering in worldly goods, making money, saving money. Much of the rational stage is consumed with this external growth and developing ourselves as human beings in this world who can accomplish things and be productive and do things in the world. But as we begin to reach the outer edges of the rational stage of consciousness, there is, as I said, this inflection point where our gaze begins to turn inward. This is called the inward arc. And the inward arc is essential in order for us to grow to the next stage of consciousness. It's essential that we turn within and begin to look for certain answers within ourselves, and also begin to do work on ourselves internally, on our shadows, on our old wounds from the past. And so the way I see it at the rational phase, like doubt is actually great. Doubt and deconstructing and dismantling our old beliefs. But there is a point at which we reach the limit of that state of mind. And when we need faith, we need to have some sort of an understanding, perhaps, of something bigger than ourselves, or the possibility that there are more things than we've ever thought of going on in the world. And that creates a crisis, which is that inflection point that can cause us to turn in. For some people, this happens at a time in life when losses begin to occur. It could be the loss of a relationship or a job, having to move somewhere and losing one's friends and family, leaving them behind. It could be a death in the family. It could be a serious illness that a person is coping with themselves. It's oftentimes a crisis, oftentimes things, in a sense, falling apart at that rational level. And that's what catalyzes this inward arc and beginning to look within. And this is the time when faith, as Alan Watts describes it, an unreserved opening of the mind to the truth becomes possible, because many times at the rational stage alone, doubt is so strong that it's hard for truth that we're not used to get in, for us to accept it or be open to it. But suddenly on the inward arc, there is an opening, and suddenly there's a desire to start learning more and to start becoming more self-aware and self-reflective. So that inward arc at the end of rational is really important, because that's what prepares us to actually transcend to the next level of consciousness, which is pluralistic. So the pluralistic level, which follows rational, is once again a we-focused level that focuses on other people. It's been called the sensitive level because for the first time, an individual at the pluralistic level recognizes the humanity of all groups, is aware of the suffering of others, tends to have a global awareness that there are challenges and difficulties everywhere, and for the first time has concern with strangers and people never met who are totally different, but has a desire to want to reach out and help other people. The pluralistic level is compassionate. There tends to be concern for the environment. There's a focus on equality and connectedness and an openness to spirituality in a much broader sense than ever before. Spirituality that may not be connected to religion at all. Many times has nothing to do with a religion. Spirituality that is due to individual practices that help one be open to something bigger in the world. And so this pluralistic level, as we can see, is the home of the green movement, wanting to take care of the planet, but also social justice and caring about others, of Black Lives Matter, people getting involved and wanting to make life better for others because of this understanding that we're all connected. If I don't help you and make life better for you, I can't make life better for myself. That is the mindset of a person at the pluralistic level. But looking back to traditional, you can see why people at the traditional level are frightened by this kind of openness and by actually validating people that have beliefs outside of their own and saying that those people have equal rights and they're just as good and just as deserving of good things in the world, because that goes against the beliefs that a person at traditional has been taught. So the pluralistic level creates a huge threat to people who are more traditional. And, the pluralistic level representing transgender rights and gay marriage rights, those fall outside the belief system that exists at the traditional level, and therefore it's very threatening. And it creates a great deal of tension, this polarity that we sense and feel in our society between these groups. But one of the problems at the pluralistic level is people at that level of consciousness also don't like people who are at the rational level or the traditional level. So people who are pluralistic like everyone else, but they tend to not like their neighbors or people in their own community or society who are at rational or traditional or some other level of consciousness. So pluralistic level suffers from the very same type of judgment and rejection of other people who think differently in when operating within one community, when trying to come together with people who think differently. They do great when they're with a like-minded group of people, but it's very challenging to be with people who think differently because they come from a different level of consciousness. So what I've been pondering is, do people at the pluralistic level exhibit faith, as Alan Watts said? Because faith is an unreserved opening of the mind to the truth, whatever it may turn out to be. Faith has no preconceptions. It is a plunge into the unknown. Belief clings, but faith lets go. And so I don't think there's one right answer. My question, does faith exist at the pluralistic level? Yes, I'm sure that it does for some people, but I think there are also some people at a pluralistic level of consciousness who still cling to belief or to doubt. And so these people may have expanded the circle of their beliefs, but they may still belong to a group, and they may still turn over their own freedom and their own critical thinking to that group, even though they're at the pluralistic level of consciousness. So it's still possible to be attached to belief at the pluralistic stage, and it's also still possible to reside in doubt, to not have moved past doubt. And in fact, I don't think we should actually move past doubt. I think being able to be skeptical, to do critical thinking, that's a skill that we need at every level. But it's possible that some people at the pluralistic level actually give up their doubt and turn to belief once again and end up believing at a completely different level in a different group of people that are teaching them. And so those individuals may need to go through another phase of doubting in order to free themselves of those beliefs so they can actually get to a place where they are fully and truly open-minded. So the fourth stage, integral, which I've been saying is the place we need to get to with as many individuals as possible in our consciousness, is completely different in this sense. Integral is the first stage that is aware of all of the other stages and actually values all of the other stages. At the integral level, you can look back and understand and have compassion for someone who's at the traditional level of conscious. You understand and have compassion for someone who's at rational. You understand and have compassion for someone who is pluralistic. And for the first time, you don't hate any of them. You see where they are. You understand that. You're willing to allow them to just be who they are and accept them. And that is phenomenal. That's the first level at which that kind of tolerance and acceptance takes place. To be able to see the value of every other level of consciousness, and also that each level is important and necessary, and it's important that we're all here together. We don't have to try to go out and ask someone to change or tell them they're wrong. We simply go out and love and accept people wherever they are. And when I say we'd like to help people get to integral, I'm talking about people at the end of the pluralistic stage who are on the cusp of transcending into integral consciousness. Those are the people who may need support. Integral is a fairly new level of consciousness development in our society, and so it's challenging to get there if there isn't enough support and enough information available about it for people to be able to see, what is this? What is this I'm experiencing? Where am I? So integral gets the big picture view, but also likes to look beneath the surface and see the deeper root issues of problems. This is the kind of thinking that we need in order to fix the problems on our planet. Integral can work for the benefit of all stages and wants change to benefit everyone. In the rules, the religion, the politics wants changes to be good for everyone from every level, is not looking to punish or hurt anyone at a different level. And at Integral, you don't really see yourselves as disagreeing so much with people at another level, simply that having a bigger perspective on things. So Integral also has a long-term focus and is definitely self-aware. And Integral is where I believe doubt and faith reside side by side. They're really tools that we use together. We use doubt to help us free ourselves from any beliefs that just don't make sense or that don't fit us anymore, any beliefs that are coming from outside of us that feel tainted and weighed down with attachment and with old wounds and pain. We continually work to free ourselves from those beliefs, and doubt is one of the ways that we do that. And that makes room for more faith, more of this openness to allow the unknown, to accept the unknown, and to accept whatever happens because this is what's happening right now, and to not demand that life unfold in the way that we can tolerate, that we can perceive it to unfold. So integral consciousness, I believe, is the stage at which we can rise above our old beliefs, but also above our own wounds, our shadow, the pain and the darkness that resides within us, to be as open-minded as possible. And when we're in that state of open-mindedness, we have maximum creativity and vision, and we can recognize paths forward that we may never have seen before. We can see solutions to problems that were not visible to us in the past. So this state of being in faith is an openness that says there may be all kinds of possibilities and solutions here, and I can't see them yet, but I'm willing to be here in this space, allowing whatever comes to me, allowing the creativity and the ideas and the expression and the emergence to come forth. So that state, I believe, is what faith is about and what Alan Watts is talking about when he describes faith. And now for the first time, it totally makes sense to me that there's a difference between belief and faith. And it's interesting, we're heading into the Christmas season for those who celebrate it, and Christmas is all about, do you believe in Christmas? But now I have to look at that question in an entirely different way, because do I believe the myths that surround Christmas? No, not necessarily, but do I have faith that it's possible for humankind to have goodwill toward one another? It's possible for us to bring more love and light into the world? Absolutely. And do I celebrate that in the midst of winter and on our longest, darkest days? Do I celebrate this possibility that we can get to a place of greater love and more light? Yes, I do. Yes, I have faith. I'm open to that. I'm open-minded about it. And I'm here and willing to share whatever I can, to carry as much light as I can, and to bring forward whatever hope I can in this space. So with all of that being said, I hope this all makes sense, but I'm going to come back again next week. I'm going to dive back into that inward arc I talked about at the end of Rational, because that's huge. That inflection point in consciousness development is something very big that's happening in our society right now, and that lots of people need help with. So I'm going to talk about that next week. And until then, remember that we're here for love. So face your fear, be ready for whatever life brings you next, be open and surrender to it, and love each and every moment of your precious life. Bye-bye.